Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for what I'm hoping is going to be the inaugural episode of a new ongoing series I'm going to be doing on a weekly basis. And the goal is kind of to have this serve as a sort of catch-all or a weekly roundup that'll cover figure pre-order announcements or little teases that might not merit their own videos. Case in point, as you'll see in this video, there are a number of third-party announcements that I'm interested in discussing, as well as some breaking news from X06, and one really exciting Hot Toys release for me personally. And it does feel like this was a pretty eventful week, especially after what feels like a relatively quiet start to the year for us collectors. So without further ado, let's dig in, and I'm going to start with X06 because they just dropped some great news for the Star Trek fans among us. And basically they're diving fully into Picard Season 3 and announced the first 3 figures from the line being retired Admiral Picard, Worf, and Captain Vadic, which was the show's original early villain, at least. For me, it's an incredible announcement on multiple fronts. First of all, I think Picard Season 3 has been outstanding. Just a great show, and there's a lot of nostalgia there seeing the crew come together, that original TNG crew. And it's a nice blend as well, showing 7 of 9 serving as executive officer of the Titan, so a nice blend of new and old characters, and I'm pretty sure we'll be getting the entire crew for this. Nanjim has been doing a great job teasing that for a while, and he even teased a picture of 7 of 9 in her commander uniform, so I'm sure we're going to be getting these as well. The other thing that's really exciting about these look like a huge improvement from X06 in terms of the sculpts. That's the one area I've been a little critical on their releases with. They have been improving, but these just look pretty awesome. There's a lot of detail on them, and the likeness for all 3 is right on. Like I said, I noticed that everything continues to improve, and the tailoring has always been top-notch, so that's still here. Even Picard in a relatively simple clothing set looks great with that Admiral Com badge. And for Worf, there's so much great detail on the clothing and on his weapons. I can't wait for the full release here and the full promo pics. And the other announcement, also worth discussing from X06, and this was from last week actually, so I'm sneaking it in here. They teased their EV suit line, starting with Worf from First Contact. The suit is supposed to include some great light-up features, and I have to imagine it's going to stand out. So I'm really curious what this is going to look like, and then how X06 is going to extend that line, because they've already mentioned they're going to be touching on a lot of the different figures. So this is just the first in what I'm sure will be a lot of upcoming ones. Though, and the final teaser to discuss is another tease from Hot Toys, which is from The Mandalorian, and it's a life-size Grogu, this time coming with his floating pod. All we have is the single image, and hopefully Hot Toys fixed the chin rip issue that used to plague the original release. I do think Grogu is a big seller. Even my wife, who isn't really a Star Wars fan, can't help but comment on how cute Grogu is. So there's definitely a broader appeal there that I think Hot Toys is depending on, and rightfully so. For me, it's a pass. I just don't collect anything but 6 scale at this point, so that alone is just why I'm not getting it. And I have skipped the Mando line until now, although we'll see if there are any other announcements from Season 3, because I'm always tempted, and maybe Hot Toys will put something out there that's really hard to pass up. Now, shifting to pre-order announcements, we're going to start with some third-party ones. The first coming to us courtesy of S-Hero Toys, and it's their Iron Monarch figure. Now, S-Hero seems to be a new player in the 6 scale game, and right now they do have 2 other figures on pre-order, including the Doom Monarch, which is a version of Dr. Doom, and the Mr. Light figure, which is their version of Mr. Knight from the Moon Knight show. That can also be displayed as Kanju, which is a pretty interesting thing. Both look decent, but I'm not sure what the final product is going to look like. But they just launched this 3rd pre-order, and it's essentially an Iron Man of sorts, with a very Dr. Doom looking bit of armor. Even the mask itself looks like a classic Doom version from the comics. But once you remove it, you see a Tony Stark head sculpt. And this is partly what's making this really appealing to me, because the head sculpt looks very much like Robert Downey Jr. I think it's not quite there, but it's pretty decent. So if I were to get this figure, I think I could get him to fit in nicely with my Marvel collection. And I think the figure looks interesting. The armor elements on his arm and legs look very medieval, like an actual suit of armor, with really nice looking detailing on the pieces. And I like that they're giving you those Iron Man colors with the red tunic and cloak. And of course, I love the chest reactor. I'm honestly on the fence here because it's an interesting different piece, but I just don't know enough about the company, and I don't know how it's going to turn out. But visually, just wanted to quickly look at this one since it does have a pretty striking appearance, and it's definitely something I'm interested in maybe getting. The next figure is worth discussing just because it is an out-of-nowhere release, and that is Storm Studios' X-Apocalypse, which is basically the title villain from the X-Men Age of Apocalypse movie. And at a quick glance, it looks pretty accurate to what we saw in the film, although I'm not sure that's a positive here. I'll be honest, the last X-Men movie that I saw that I really liked was Days of Future Past. I love that movie. I really wasn't a big fan of the final X-Men movies in the series, and to be honest, I still haven't watched Dark Phoenix. Age of Apocalypse honestly just seemed to squander so many things that had been done right up until that point, and I didn't care for the look of the villain. I get that you can't do a direct reproduction of what we saw in the comics, but I just didn't like the version they went with. Having said that, the reason I wanted to discuss the figure is because the sculpt seems really solid, and the detailing on the outfit does include some interesting elements. All right, for example, you've got some great detail work, and then as far as accessory, you get those sand nanobot effects that can connect to his hands. Always nice for posing, and I do like the skull base. Honestly, that base could serve as something that you could use with Terminator figures with some slight modifications. Other interesting thing is that they're already showing a picture with silhouettes of the other 4 horsemen. So you can see Storm, Magneto, Archangel, and Psylocke in the background. Will they actually make these? I think it'll depend on how this one sells, but it's nice to get an idea of what's to come, and I do think the prototype looks really good. This one's an easy pass for me. Again, I just didn't like the movie, but I do think there's some good work here, and if Storm Studios can actually have their production piece match the prototype, you'd have another good player in the third-party market. So definitely a company that I'd be willing to keep an eye on, although it is on the pricier side for third-party, breaking the $200 mark. So hopefully at that price point, the quality is there to match. The next one is also an out-of-nowhere release, and I just had to offer my thoughts on this one because it's a little random and offers some things I don't think we normally see in 6-scale figure offerings, but I do have to say I am slightly tempted to pick this one up because it is an MCU figure, essentially. Don't judge me, but I could see this fitting into the collection a little bit. And this is a figure they're calling the Sorceress from a new company, ADD Toys. And it's clearly Wanda from WandaVision, from the episode that takes place in the 70s. I'll start by saying the clothing looks good and pretty screen accurate, which is a big plus, and she does come with 2 sculpts. The base sculpt looks to be potentially a recast of some of the Hot Toys Wanda figures, or at least the early ones, complete with rooted hair. I do think the likeness is there. The second sculpt is interesting for a whole range of issues. First of all, it has a light up feature for the eyes, and it is sculpted with an angry expression. With the eyes lit up, I think there's a slight likeness there to Wanda, but once those are turned off, I just don't see it. And it's not to say that the sculpt is bad, because it actually does seem to have some really good detail work, especially around the eyes, but I just don't see the likeness, but points for trying. The other note here is that they're saying the eyes light up by voice, so I'm guessing they're teasing voice commands, which is pretty intriguing, especially for third-party companies, and I'd be curious to see how they execute. Besides that, you do have some options to show her. The figure does come with almost like a pregnant pillow that you can attach to the body, and then there does seem to be an add-on pack or an option, because they're calling it the B option, to get the twins and with a crib. So not sure how that's going to get packaged. I haven't seen it up for pre-order yet on any of the sites. It's not something I would have ever expected anyone to make, but it looks like someone decided to provide it. Like I said, I'm tempted just a little bit, but then again, I don't know if it would really fit in, especially when you consider most of my Marvel figures are either shown in their superhero costumes or fully armed, so not sure that this version of civilian Wanda would fit in. So another wait and see for me. Now, final things we have to discuss for pre-orders are the third-party Last of Us figures. Toys Era already showcased their Lost Father, and Mars Toys has already teased their own version as well. Well, today we got a double whammy. This week with Toys Era, they announced their Last Hope figure, which is based on Ellie, and it looks pretty good. I think the accessories and clothing all look great, and the sculpt is relatively solid. I do see some issues with the paint apps, but it looks good overall. And all I can say about Toys Era is that they have been improving pretty dramatically, so I wouldn't be surprised if the final product isn't at least as good as what we're seeing here or potentially better. I mean, look at the Last Father figure with the much improved sculpt. I do think there are some things they can improve. The knives, for example, she comes with, I don't think they're accurate, and I don't think Joel comes with the right switchblade either. I'd have to go back and take a look at those. And I also think the gun she carries is different from what she carries on the show. But besides that, there's a ton of great detail work here. And I actually do like the work they did on her backpack. Am I getting her? That's the real question. And the answer is it depends. So far, Toys R Us is the only company that teased her. Now, like with Joel, I think I want to wait to see if Mars Toys will reveal theirs before I commit to either figure. One set will definitely be coming home. It's just a question of which one. But I will tell you which it won't be. And that's the next preview, which is by CC Toys, who also announced their Joe figure. And as we look at the pics, I'll just say that if I had to pick right now, I would 100% go with the Toys R Us version. I think clothing set, accessories, and most importantly sculpt are 100% better on the Toys R Us than the CC Toys version. The sculpt here just doesn't look right, and while they are giving you an alternate angry look, I just don't think the face looks that great. Also, weathering wise and weapon wise, the clothing on the CC Toys set is just way too clean. So I think unfortunately for CC Toys, there's already a better figure on the market. And then with Mars Toys in the wing, I think there's a potential that they're going to deliver something even better. So it's great that we have an alternate offering. I just don't think it's superior to what we're seeing right now. Next up, we have to look at some new releases. And all three this week are from Hot Toys. And without a doubt, the most exciting one for me as a Marvel/MCU collector, Carnage. I do have the original Hot Toys Venom, although he's still boxed up, so I'll have to do a review video at some point. So getting Carnage was a no-brainer. Full disclosure, again, the movie I thought was okay. It was entertaining. It's not the best, not the worst, not something that I need to revisit anytime soon, but Carnage. I love Carnage from the comics. I always loved the stories with Venom and Spidey, and I love the way he looked in the movie. I know they made him taller than Venom, but I thought he looked incredible overall. And I think based on the blogger images we're looking at, and full credit to all the photographers, these aren't my pictures. I took them from Hot Toys' Facebook group, so full credit to them. But it looks like the final product turned out great. When you talk about a figure with shelf presence, this is the type of figure that just draws you in. So he's out in both versions, and someone posted on Facebook groups that they were getting their invoices from Sideshow. So maybe there's a chance he ships soon. I've had him on pre-order since day one, and I can't wait to get him in hand. And for me, I did order just the Carnage. Well, I think the bust, the Venom bust looks great. I just didn't need to get that. The next actual release was R2-D2 from Attack of the Clones, and I think he turned out great. Finish work on him looks awesome with the great weathering and the sheer number of display options you have with him. I think everything here really turned out well, so if you're getting him, I don't think you'll be disappointed. With Star Wars, I tend to be pretty selective with what I get. I went all in on the Force Awakens line. I pretty much passed on the releases from the other movies, and I actually sold off some of my original trilogy figures, including that original Bespin Luke DX. I just didn't have the passion for the line that I have for Marvel or for Star Trek at this point in time. That might definitely put me in the minority, I know. And when it comes to Star Wars, I usually try to pick up the Jedi style figures. For example, I have Reva and the Grand Inquisitor on order. I may get some other figures, but that's kind of the limit for me on those. So I passed on R2-D2, not because I don't like the figures, because I think he looks great and I think he turned out great, but I just can't go down that rabbit hole. But I think this figure, if you're getting him, I think it's a pretty decent offering. And we did get a third drop from Hot Toys this week, and that was the Cyborg figure from the Zack Snyder Justice League movie. And I think it turned out amazingly well. The sculpt looks incredible, and the paint apps on the armor also look really well done. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the videos start dropping for this guy, because I think this is a home run for Hot Toys. And for those of you that still have your Justice League figures, you finally get to complete the set. I'm not getting him, just again, I stopped with DC. I'm really more focused on their individual properties now, instead of that main DCEU or DCU now. I just think WB dropped the ball on the stories they were telling. So while I think the figure looks great, it's just not enough for me to jump into pre-order. But that doesn't take away again from how good this looks and how good it turned out. So that was it for this week. And going forward, like I said, I'll make videos for the big announcements like I did this week for the Bat Armory. But I'll consolidate the other things I want to discuss into a weekly recap at the end of the week. I haven't tried my hand at streaming yet, but this might be the series that eventually turns into that. I am a small channel though, so not in a rush to start that just yet. But I think overall a really eventful week for 6 scale collectors, and that's me just focusing on a few items that caught my attention, because there were definitely a bunch of other things that were teased that we're not reviewing here or looking at. So let me know what you think about any of the topics that we touched on today. And as always, thanks for watching. And if you are enjoying, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll touch base on the next video.